Public CEO Report is a podcast that provides insights about the public sector and public policy for the benefit of decision makers and leaders powering our communities.
I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by Erica Olsen, CEO and founder of Madison AI. And welcome to the Public CEO Report.
Hi, Ryder. So glad to be here.
Erica, it's great to have you here. So I'm excited to have you here because first of all, thanks for being a guest, but I have heard good things about Madison AI. You guys have kind of made a splash in the market in this super exciting genre of AI-powered technologies. And my sense is Madison AI is focused on those specific to the local government sector, which is of huge interest to the local government world that I spend so much of my life in. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today to kind of orient my audience and the Public CEO Network in general to all things Madison AI. Before we get into it, let's just start with a quick background. How did you find yourself in this little world of local government, which is, it's a niche sector, so it takes a special pathway to get here?
It's so true. Again, thanks for having me, by the way. And just, being here to inspire what's possible with AI for public sector CEOs is just, again, why we're in this space. So excited to share some ideas. The quick background is I've been running a strategic planning and performance management company for about 20 years prior to Madison AI. And about half of our clients in that space are local government. Okay. So I've been working in that for a really long time, really long-standing relationships, and very passionate about local government, cities and counties, creating the future of our communities. It's just really what it's all about. And I just believe in that. So transitioning into AI, our team decided about last year that generative AI can be and will be a mission multiplier when applied correctly. And generative AI is a perfect tool for local government. We can talk more about that. And that's of course why we're here and why we have Madison AI, but it was birthed out of a specific set of work with one of our clients, Washoe County, a very specific use case. And it was all because we instigated this idea that as strategic planners, we are change agents, and generative AI is going to transform and change organizations, and let's be part of that. And local government, we need our local governments to be as great and as effective and as impactful as possible. And so that's why we're doing this. So we can talk more about it, but that's the high level background.
So it makes sense given the disruptive nature of, at least the perception of the disruptive nature of AI, hopefully disruption to the positive, but nonetheless disruption that a change management oriented consulting firm would find itself steeped into the AI world, from what I can tell. That seems like a logical connection.
Totally. Yep. And we have a lot of, we also run a strategic planning platform. So we have a tech background as well. So that's hence the connection.
All right. Great. Nerds for the win. All right. So let me ask, I guess, why Madison AI?
Yeah, perfect. So first things first. So we called it Madison AI for James Madison, who stood for good governance, as we all know. And where it came from is a road mapping session, a prioritization session with Washoe County, because I said, hey, everybody, we've got to figure out how can we lightly apply generative AI in a safe, secure, non-threatening way to just see what's possible. And we started in one place. Actually, we started thinking about how we could use AI for the short-term rental renewal process. And that turned out to not be simple, not to be risk-free, and not to be, quite frankly, doable for a variety of reasons. And we came back around to a very simple use case, which was AI-assisted staff reports or board reports or council reports, whatever you want to call them in your jurisdiction. And I always say it's really simple. And to do that, we had to create a knowledge base. So to create staff reports, you need the institutional knowledge of the organization. You need all of the background related to a topic that is found in an organization's minutes, previous staff reports, master plans, budgets, code, laws, et cetera, right? And so that is exactly what generative AI is built for. It's built to take disparate information and actually make sense of it, finally. Local government has tons of that information, right? Publicly available information that is accessible, is actually clean because it's approved, and putting that into a knowledge base and layering a custom GPT on top of that, you can actually do AI-assisted staff reports. So that's what we did. And that's what birthed Madison AI. I know so it happens to be that base also allows us to do other reporting, fiscal reporting, board briefings, state reporting, et cetera. But that's kind of the high level why Madison AI.
So you mentioned specifically you guys are creating staff reports, but let me just zoom out for a second before we dive back into Madison in general. What does, I guess, for the world out there, AI is like coming up everywhere, and now everybody's trying to be AI powered. I mean, Apple just released their iOS that's AI powered. Everybody wants AI. It's helping their market caps of companies soar, and people are making billions of dollars. But what the heck does AI mean from your perspective?
Yeah, I love that. So I just talking about that for a second. I think we're in a little bit the trough of disillusionment with AI right now, right? So, 2 years ago, ChatGPT kind of came on the stage, so to speak, for real in a consumer way, and was supposed to be a productivity saver, right? And a lot of people are not really realizing that, and so we're kind of like, I think a lot of folks are sitting back with skepticism, and I think there's a good reason why. And one thing that is the problem is, what are we supposed to use generative AI to do? Like, what are we supposed to use these agents and these knowledge assistants to do, the chatbots? Like, what are we supposed to do with these things? And writing poems and having avatars and all that stuff is cute, but we're running organizations, or the listeners are running really important agencies that are probably understaffed, have more demands than they can fulfill, and we don't really have time for playing around with this stuff. So in that regard, what generative AI can actually do that is new as a technology, and I mentioned it a little bit ago, but let's be more clear about it, is it can actually pull together unstructured data. We've never really had that opportunity before. We've never been able to take hundreds of thousands of PDFs and read them and ingest them and summarize them and create from them. The way that local government does that is there's somebody who's been there for 30 years, and you go ask them about the thing that happened with policy XYZ or ABC, and they know because they listen to a single board meeting, right? So the power of generative AI is and what OpenAI does for us as those of us that work in local government is to be able to access information that we weren't able to access before. And I think that's a really simple summary. I'm sure the big tech folks listening would kind of disagree with me, but like, that's how I like to think about it. And I'll say one last thing to this. I'm really passionate about being clear about the use case that AI can assist in. So that's why we picked staff reports. People say, oh, I understand. Every staff report has a background section. Every staff report has summary board or council actions, right? We know that we can pull that information together. I understand how to flow that into a very simple workflow. That's how we should be thinking about AI, because otherwise we're picking the technology and finding a problem. We found a problem and we're applying the technology. So again, it's kind of a long-winded answer.
Nope.
But that's kind of that's why it's working for people, because like our public sector CEOs, they get it. They're like, absolutely, we spent a lot of time on this process. We could definitely use a little bit of assistance with it. So
I was talking to city manager who's one of your clients about some of the challenges they were facing and the opportunities for using Madison AI. And some of that discussion got into essentially the role of institutional knowledge in local government, and maybe that's why it plays an outsized role relative to other organizations, which I concur with. A case point being, cities are not supposed to go away, right? Cities are supposed to be forever, assuming the republic stands. And so in that circumstance, the institution has a lot of history to worry about, right? As opposed to, say, a small business that may come and go after 20 years or 5 years or 50 years, right? So usually these institutions, private sector institutions, nonprofits, they tend to have a shorter life than a government agency. And so it just makes institutional knowledge all the more important and more challenging in an environment where your city staff are moving around or agency staff are moving around, which we see a lot of right now because there's a big scramble for skilled talent in the local government world, and staffing has become a huge challenge. So I think more than other sectors, capturing institutional knowledge is a huge opportunity, a huge competitive advantage or a huge benefit for agencies to use AI to take that structured institutional knowledge and turn it into something. So, it strikes me like that's just a natural fit to take all that structured data. And then I guess the second point would be, from my take, is, and you noted this already, institutions are very good, government institutions are very good about writing staff reports and having prior documentation and having public meetings with a bunch of knowledge and information on them. And so in that regard, there's a bunch of data to be gathered, like it's already created. You just don't get, like most companies don't have extensive minutes and video recordings of the last 20 years of their board meetings or of the senior management meetings they've gone on, whereas government agencies typically have all that stuff. So, I guess I'd look for your comment on these 2 points I raised about the unique characteristics of cities and its applicability to the Madison AI solution.
100%. So taking the first point for a minute, in terms of the institutional knowledge, cities and counties build on topics mostly, right? Policy is built on topics and evolving topics or issues or projects or whatever it happens to be. And so in that regard, having the access to all the previous action that's occurred from a board perspective or a council perspective, and as staff moves, like you were just huge concern about the loss of institutional knowledge. It is actually the perfect solution, because we've all been in places where we've tried to create knowledge bases and we never used them. It's easier to go down the hall and talk to the 35-year-old veteran, right? That's been there at least for the next 6 months, and have that conversation with that individual. And certainly that works, but it's subject to that individual's memory, which is arguably a quality issue, right? And so that's been working up until now, but it doesn't need to be that brittle, so to speak. So that's like, you're absolutely right. That is a problem that's worth solving, 100%. And another problem that's worth solving is, it is a special thing in local government that the tasks of running a government require a lot of paperwork. They just do. And more so than other organizations for the expectations around transparency, the expectations around decision-making at the elected level, et cetera. And so why not support that? And those reports and staff reports, state reports, community reports are not going away. And it also is a morale killer. My business partner in this, Dave Solero, the assistant county manager of Washoe County, he always said, and that's why he's so passionate, he says, I want planners to do planning work. I don't want my planners to be doing staff reports as a disproportionate amount of their job, and that's what they're doing today. Now, they're important, but let's actually make that better. And then summarizing on the second point you made is, generative AI only works when the data is clean. Well, that is it's like saying, well, let's make sure that air is clean. How do we do that? And the public record, like it or not, is clean official information. And so that has just been like a complete game changer. Doing this in the private sector is, it takes a long time to get clean data. This is working out quite well. And again, we're like sort of making fun of ourselves a bit, because staff reports are kind of simple, but they take like 4 to 6 hours per staff report. And most agendas have like 20 or 30 staff reports. Yep. That's a really high volume. And they're important. They're not important. And so anyway, so that brings your 2 points together in terms of why this is so uniquely positioned for local government. And I guess I'll make one last point, which is, we're so scared of hallucinations and we're scared of security. So what we built is a closed LLM. So it's only accessing that institution's data, that institution's publicly available information. And because it's publicly available, there's no personally identifiable information in it. So the security risk is arguably low or nil. So that's another reason why this is working out, in terms of at least a step in this direction about what's possible.
Yeah, so you just started to go in a direction conveniently that I wanted to probe on, which is this idea of the large language model, LLM, the acronym you used, being trained by the knowledge that's specific to the agency, and it's not gathering or creating hallucinations, meaning imagined data or imagined information based upon random data it picks up off the internet, or somebody who's a blogger that mentioned the name of the agency or something like that. So I guess a key point in the difference between, say, using some other solutions that are out there for AI in general, you could think of just like the open ones like Anthropic or a ChatGPT or something like that as part of OpenAI. The one key point here is that it's proprietary knowledge, not proprietary in that it's not publicly available, but it's knowledge that's specific to the agency, educating and informing the large language model. So it's only pulling information from that entity itself and not something down the street or something posted on the internet by some rando, right?
That's exactly correct. So in non-technical terms, we are taking all that institutional knowledge that's in the minutes and et cetera that I mentioned. It is boxed in, and we are using the technology that is OpenAI to process the information, but it's not feeding the large language model, it's not training the large language model, and it's not accessing the data in the large language model. And every single sentence that's returned has a citation, and that citation links back to the source file. So it's very contained because local government has a higher bar to be accurate and complete. I always like to say, if there were 10 actions on affordable housing last year, we need to know all of those 10 actions, not 8 of them. And when you're using ChatGPT or any other, Anthropic, whatever, we don't need it to be complete. Local government's use of AI needs to be complete and accurate. And so those are the two ways that we're solving for that, or that is actually, quite frankly, guidelines for the value of Madison AI.
Yeah. You talked a bit about kind of risk-free experimentation with AI is somewhat you described as a principle around what you're trying to work on. There's a concept I talk about with local government leaders, both elected and public servants, city staff, agency staff in general, which is really just like having a certain acceptability level for risk. Because if you don't allow a certain level of risk in your organization, then you can't evolve and try new things because everybody's freaked out about risk consequences, right? Or losing a job or being shamed or whatever it may be. And I always encourage organizations to have an open conversation between the elected leadership and the management staff to say, what's our risk threshold around here? What kind of risk are you prepared to give us permission to pursue to try something new and different? So I'm just curious, thinking about that strategy, it sounds like you guys have created a model that is relatively risk averse or risk mitigating because you're relying only on data that's already existing and is already theoretically public for the most part. But if you could just speak to why this is a nice way to stick your toe in the water without finding yourself up to your neck in quicksand.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, so the one answer to that is because we're using publicly available data. That really has put at ease all the CIOs, all the public sector CIOs whose job is to protect the data of their agency, right? So there's kind of no pushback on that, or there hasn't been. The other thing that we're doing is we have built it in the Microsoft environment. Not all local governments use the Microsoft environment, but a lot of them do. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft has made a very big stance, as I'm sure you know, to be data secure and to have very clear principles in place around data security and not training, the big language model and all of the large language model that's part of OpenAI as a consumer product, and kind of all of those pieces. And then I guess I want to say though, and I know we know this, and it's again not that exciting, but we really want to make sure that our clients have AI policies and acceptable use guidelines in place first. So even though it's risk-free, human in the loop is a strong principle. So the AI-assisted staff report that Madison AI is generating, the responsibility is on the user to review it and make sure that whatever that individual is putting forth, into the agenda packet is, of course, their work or their blessing. And so I just think that's so important. And that comes from individual responsibility and organizational responsibility around AI principles, AI and AI policy. So I just want to say that because it's hard. It's not exactly enforceable, but it is a value and it is an expectation of how we should proceed forward as leaders in organizations to encourage innovation with the guardrails that are very clearly set forth. That, quite frankly, don't look like a 20-page policy, but maybe 2 pages. So we actually know what we're supposed to do and we can follow it. So, yeah.
Very fair. So let's talk, usually city leaders, they're kind of brass tacks too, right? Like, just, so is this real? Are they a first mover if they try to use it, Madison AI? What is, I'm not asking to reveal all your client list, but what's going on? Who are some of your clients that you're working with, or what are their use cases you've been able to make an impact on in the market?
Yeah, awesome. So again, like this was a kind of a big experiment, right? To just see what was possible. I'll share with you just to be super clear. So Madison AI is a partnership with ourselves and Washoe County in Reno, Nevada. So we like to say it's built by local government. It's not built by technologists sitting in a room somewhere. So we're evolving and co-creating with them. And that's just super important. So Washoe County has been using it for staff reports for the past 4 or 5 months, actually. So, and that's been deployed through several departments. So that's a really specific use case. That use case, our metrics on that is it takes about 4 to 6 hours to write a staff report. We're seeing, able to get a staff report done in about 30 minutes. So that's the kind of internal time tracking, which is awesome. Other examples, Los Altos Hills, another one of our clients in California, a recent thing they did was use it for a speech, which is super fun. So what's really cool is because it is contained to that organization's knowledge, PDFs, right. Say, it's their voice and tone. So that's super fun. So that's a thing that they did, which I would have never thought about, quite frankly. One of our other clients is the Transportation Commission here in Reno, the RTC. They used it actually to create a construction manual. So they created a construction manual for an upcoming project. They actually tested it using Madison AI and using ChatGPT and put it in front of their engineers to ask them which was better. And the engineers said the Madison AI one was better because it was actually based on the policy of the organization. So that's another really cool use case. Chanhassen, City of Chanhassen in Minnesota is also another client. County of Santa Clara is another client. And there are others as well, but those are some folks that are currently using Madison AI either in a full deployment or in a single department and then rolling it out from there. So, but I've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this for a long time. We've all been in our roles for a long time. We wanted to say, if it's not our product, to our public sector CEOs, try something. Just get going with something, even if it's whatever it looks like, risk-free and just easy to say what's possible. How might we shift work just a little bit? And I think that's just my encouragement, no matter what folks are using.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that point. I think that goes back to my earlier comments about setting up a appropriate risk level environment that encourages innovation, taking some risk, and also just being willing to stick your toe in the water and see what some of these tools can do. But you got to do that cognizant of which data you're sending into which large language model and where that might be turning into a broader data set outside the confines of your own organization. So, that's why you need to be thoughtful about it before you just jump in deep. And I appreciate that list of entities that you're working with too. It's obviously a broad set, and I'm sure that as they evolve, as governments are good at doing, they'll start sharing some of their stories as well about where they're making an impact. The data on I would love to drill real quick. How do you, the gathered up data, 4 to 6 hours per staff report versus the 30 minutes, is that yielded from just internal timesheet reporting that they're doing as a collaboration partner? So they're self-reporting that data to identify what the time was versus others.
Yes, exactly. And look, we all know there's staff reports that are super simple and there's staff reports that are quite complex. So let's agree that that's just an average. That's just for the general staff report. And that was internal time tracking. Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, honestly, we've been in the marketplace we launched this thing in in March, and we have, I don't know, 12 clients that are like signed clients. We've got another 40 pilots in the market. So that's kind of been our approach to say, hey, look, we know that this is so new. Let us build you a pilot with your information. You try it and see if this is helpful in adding value to your organization. If so, then let's move from there. So we're kind of like, it's new. And so we don't have tons of utilization data on it. So I'd love to come back in 6 months and say, okay, here's the hard metrics, as we're seeing more deployments and able to get more use cases across our clients. Yeah.
And one thing also, when you describe tuning the data, I have a few kind of quick hit questions, but when you talk about tuning the data and tuning the output, the part of that, I assume, is you tune the output to actually yield those subsections of the report or the sections of the staff report that need to be generated. So it knows I need a background section, I need a policy section, I need a council options section, whatever it may be. Is that a fair description?
Exactly right. So we're customizing the staff reporting. Sounds so simplistic, but either way, we're customizing that output to that client, that organization's staff report structure, and it is a multi-prompted output as you would expect. So that's what's different than, and there's a lot of things that are different, but one of the things that's different than your kind of off the shelf solutions is customizing that, and again it's multi-prompted, and we've taken it as far as it outputs into a Word document that's structured to your agency's format, if you will. I know a lot of folks are also using sort of one meeting with Granicus and that sort of thing. So if that can also just be plug and play if you don't actually need to submit a physical Word document. So, but either way, the answer to your question is yes. Each section is specifically prompted and specifically customized to that agency's standard.
And do you have to be a current Microsoft Cloud customer or a Microsoft 365 customer?
You don't actually. So that's also what's super cool. I'm a big believer in not reducing as many blockers as possible. So all of that licensing is done on our end. If you're a Microsoft user, then you're leveraging that like authentication, which is nice and easy and an easy customer experience. If not, then we're just setting you up as a regular user but you don't have to be a Microsoft user. No.
All right. And then what's the generals on how you do the pricing model?
Absolutely. So I'm, as I said before too, I'm a really big believer in simplicity. So it's unlimited users, unlimited utilization, up to probably 20 or 25, because the utilization it can get quite large, and all the large language models are pricing on tokens, as you all can imagine. So we're trying to do all-in-one pricing, ranges between about 15 and 25,000 per year on a subscription basis. So the math on that is quite frankly less expensive than licensing Copilot, and it's also less than individual utilization of ChatGPT or whatever. So we're really trying to make it as accessible and deployable as possible. So that's about it. And then again, it doesn't, like, files don't matter. It doesn't matter the number of files. It doesn't matter the number of users. All of that is taken care of, and all the licensing is taken care of as well.
All right. So, and for context for the audience, my last recollection is Microsoft Copilot is generally pricing out about $25 a seat for a Copilot license. And I think Anthropic has some like Teams solutions that they've developed in their AI tool. I think that's around $20 or $25 a seat as well per team member that's integrated. So that's in my head as I've been looking at AI for my firm. I've been contemplating like per seat pricing, which is roughly, I'm in the space of $20 to $30 a month per seat for access to AI solutions. So yeah, I could easily go ahead.
Talk about that for a second too. So I think there's importance on all of these tools. So what's really, really awesome about Copilot is it's a great individual productivity solution. Our goal with Madison AI is to create an enterprise-wide solution to help address these very specific tasks that many people in the organization, of course, need to execute, but not everybody, hence not doing per seat pricing. But also the other thing that's super important is with whether you're using Anthropic or Copilot, you're not necessarily accessing the volume of files. And so that's also a really important thing that's different than what Microsoft is out of the box. So my encouragement for all of our listeners is purpose-built local government solutions. And there are quite a few really amazing solutions on the market, whether it's for chatbots or for HR or whatever it might be, is really kind of the way to go to fit into using the tool for the outcome that we're looking for. So.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'm curious, have you run into any barriers or state level legal issues with implementation, or are you able to cross state lines with no issues, and pretty much every state is an open game?
Yeah, we haven't had any issues at the state level from a legal perspective or otherwise. It's always a blast to go through the contracting process. So, if there's any roadblocks, that's that. It's just, it takes time. I will say, just to give a plug to the Gov AI Coalition, they've done a really awesome job on trying to create some possible standards and best practices around vendor contracts, quite frankly, actually using vendors to create closed LLMs. They did that. So that's been really super helpful in terms of helping attorneys, at least the attorneys that are reviewing, the DAs that are reviewing our contracts, to say, here's a third-party standard in terms of how we should be thinking about AI. So yeah, that's
all
a great.
So every state is available. There's no legal restrictions from your perspective on states or entities inside every state in America tapping into Madison AI as a solution.
So far, but it changes every day. But so far, yeah.
That's true. And any other objections you've heard from agencies or expressions of concern that you would like to proactively address now in this conversation?
I think the only objections that we have heard are really around the idea of, are we really going to use this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's your classic change management process, right? I mean, whether it's our tool, whether it's Copilot, whether it's anything that we're investing in, how we as leaders and how we as knowledge workers change how we work is the kind of the big challenge with AI, right? And I think you're seeing a lot of articles in the media about that. Really, we really do have to change our behavior. And as an organization, we also have our own tool, right? We built our own closed LLM, and if I'm totally honest, we haven't figured out exactly all the places to start to use it either, right? And so that's a place where part of my work as a strategic planning consultant is on one part, yeah, we need to build the right thing, but on the other part, we need to really instigate change, and we need to do a good job training. And we all know this, like we intrinsically know this, but we built this into our methodology too, because sling and tech tools is not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like really getting the value that we've been talking about today is taking time, and it's really taking the leadership. Sorry, I'm just going to transition that for just a second. Those individuals we're working with today are leaders that are driving innovation. Whether it's Peter at Los Altos Hills or Dave at Washoe County or Lori at Chanhassen, they have said to everybody, we're not going to replace your jobs. We want you to try. We just want to try and see what's possible. And I think that's really, like, if we were to kind of like put the objections up there, it's really about how are we going to get people to start to use different tools, and that's part of that's part of the work. So
yeah.
Other than that, there hasn't been tech objections or security objections or legal objections.
Okay. I would, from my perspective too, running an organization, having a team that is adaptable is such a core trait for a high performance team in what I would deem as a pretty dynamic environment. Going back to the response to COVID and how teams were able to adapt to that changed environment and move with haste. There were those that were stuck, and it was a real struggle because they didn't have a culture that could adapt. And then there were organizations that could adapt with ease, and they just flexed and made it happen. So the kind of adaptation instinct, and as a core strength for organizations, is important, I think, for city leaders to contemplate as they consider the implementation of AI solutions and its broader impact in multiple facets where you might see it in their organizations. All right, two final questions here. Look to the future a little bit. Give me, I don't need you to reveal your product roadmap, but to the extent you want to talk about it, what else you got out there on the horizon for the solution that you'd like to foreshadow for the audience?
Yeah, a couple of ways that were maybe three different fields of play, if you will. So one is this idea of building, so it's fundamentally Madison AI is a knowledge assistant and a report writer, right? As straightforward and as simple as that is. And we've contained that knowledge to a domain. So in the particular case we've been talking about, it's the council or the board of county commissioners, the policy level of an organization. Well, that's one place. The next set of places to build LLMs or to build knowledge assistants would be planning and development, would be internal policies. And you could sort of see it for other domains within cities and counties. So one thing we're working on right now is for planning and development and really thinking about how it can help planners. So, and that's a really specific thing in order to pull in a lot of other information, quite frankly, that's not in the public domain and in minutes and agendas and all that jazz. So that's one place that we're going, which is kind of obvious. Another place that we're going is multi-jurisdictional LLMs. So everybody always wants to know what's the other entity, what are the other entities doing, right? So we have an experimentation with Alliance for Innovation, where we are working on a multi-jurisdictional budgeting LLM to help with budgeting and planning, and we'll see where that goes. That's sort of a really interesting thing to think about, and if you really scale that up, you could think really big about that. I think we might hit some tech edges on that, so maybe the tech's not ready for us yet, but it would be amazing. So that's something that we're playing with. We're also building for the state of Nevada. We're playing with the idea of building a knowledge assistant for the legislative process. So our legislature meets every 2 years. So we have a little bit of ability to kind of get ahead of it for the 2025 session. So that's really cool. But the big thing where I think there's opportunity, this pattern of, accessing data, synthesizing and analyzing it and returning it in a format or a report can also be applied to the public records request process. And so that's kind of a really big idea that a lot of people have tried and are working on, and I think is perfect for generative AI. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I would definitely say in my experience working with over 200 local government agencies, like public records requests are super frustrating for folks and just a tremendous amount of work. When I say frustrating, it's not that they're trying to play hide the football. It's more just like it's a lot of work. And sometimes the process, to be blunt from my perspective, is abused by people who are trying to create a lot of challenges and frustrations for organizations and kind of going beyond the intent of the public records request. But either way, it's a huge sticking point and a big labor suck for organizations. So if there's a technology tool that helps address that, that can be tremendously advantageous. So I'm sure our audience members will be excited to learn more about the advancement of all those items. So speaking of which, if our audience wants to track you down, how do they learn more about Madison AI? How do they reach you as well? Share your information, please, so folks know how to make that happen.
Absolutely. So I'll tag back onto the thing that you just mentioned too. So we're going to stay in the world of how can we help AI-assisted processes for local governments to run those processes that are important for transparency and effective governance of agencies. Public records are part of that, but that are also really laborious. So if we can use generative AI in those spaces and places, that's like our focus 100%. And so folks can find us at madisonai.com, and there's a simple little contact us form, and it comes right to us. We're a small team. We respond, we're here, we answer the phone, we work with our clients, and we're all about it. So we'd love to chat with anybody. We'd love to explore it as well. We understand that this is all new, and like I mentioned before, we're here to help inspire. We're also here to help build, and if we can help in any of those ways, we'd love to do that, and we'd love to have folks as customers too. But we'd also love to just to spread the word. So, and that's how folks can find us.
Great, thank you. And that's today's report. My thanks to Erica for joining us, from the whole PublicCEO team and myself, Ryder Todd Smith. Thank you for your time.
We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. If you have feedback, questions, or guest suggestions for PublicCEO Report, please email editor@PublicCEO.com.